This is episode 40 of the Expert Table Tennis Podcast. My name is Ben Larcombe, and joining me on the show today is Dan Seemiller. I'm sure you will have all heard of Dan Seemiller. I guess he's probably most famous because of the Seemiller grip, which was named after him, also sometimes known as the American grip. Dan was a top table tennis player both in the US and internationally in the 70s and the 80s. He was 5 times US men's singles champion, 12 times US men's doubles champion, and 7 times US mixed doubles champion. So he's won a whole host of titles, loads of international stuff as well. And yeah, Dan's come out with a new book, which is called Revelations of a Table Tennis Champion. I thought it'd be awesome to get him on the podcast, talk a little bit about his life, his career, why he wrote the book, and just get him to share some tips with you guys. So I hope you enjoy this interview with Dan Seemiller. My guest on the show today is USATT legend Dan Seemiller. Hi, Dan.
Hi, Ben. Nice to be on.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. God, I've got so much to ask you. You've come out with this new book, Revelations of a Table Tennis Champion. It's on Amazon. I bought it kind of the second it came out, and then I've just been reading it recently, and it's really great. Tell us about the book, Dan. Tell us kind of what's it about and why you decided to write it.
Well, I did write a book about instructions in 1996, and that was a good book to write. It was fun. But this one here was just talking about my career and all the different ups and downs and the highs and lows and the hard work and also just the table tennis world, traveling around and playing. I just thought that I really always wanted to tell my story, and I've never always put it aside. And finally, now I'm sort of semi-retired a little bit. I decided to sit down every day and write for 3 or 4 months, and after that, it was pretty much ready. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Did you enjoy writing it? Was it nice kind of going back over old memories?
It was awesome. It was literally awesome. I went through all kinds of books and all my stuff that was up in the attic, and also all of Tim Bogan's books. And, it brought back a lot of memories. And even though I have those memories and going back on it and then seeing the whole scope of how many tournaments I played and for so many years, it's kind of hard to believe now that I actually did all that.
You were certainly at the top of kind of the American table tennis game for a good number of years. It was kind of late 70s and the 80s that you were at your peak, was it, Dan?
Yeah, I pretty much became number one in the U.S. about 1973, and I pretty much held it till about 82. And then Eric Bogan came on, and then him and I went back and forth for a couple years, and then he pretty much took over for a little bit after that.
Yeah, that was one of the big things that came up in the book, was like the back and forth between you and Eric. Is that something that really stands out as a big part of your career?
Oh, yeah. Eric and I are intertwined completely. He came up and he actually came to a couple of my table tennis camps, and I taught him how to loop. And then we ended up in some just amazing, amazing matches. Our national finals are just hard to believe, almost like a movie. He's up 19-16 in the fifth and serving, and I get all 5. And he beats me when he's 15 years old in the final and crushes me. There's just a lot between us, but we were always friends. But on the table, we never had a problem on the table other than the fact that we both were like bulldogs.
Yeah, and you both had a very similar style, and we're going to talk a bit more about your technique and everything later on. But were you kind of instrumental in teaching that to Eric? I'm assuming that he didn't just stumble across playing in the same way.
Well, I didn't actually teach him how to hold it initially, because a lot of American players kind of play like that. But I did teach him that he used to smash his forehand all the time, and he didn't really have a good loop on that side. And I told him that, if you don't have a good loop, underspin to your wide forehand is going to kill you. You can't smash that ball at the high level. And then he finally started the loop, and then, a year later, he beat me in a national final at the age of 15.
And what was the age gap between the two of you?
Almost 10 years.
Okay, so it was quite a considerable gap.
Oh, definitely a gap, yep.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's go all the way back to your childhood, how you first got playing in table tennis. And I wonder if you could just kind of briefly share your introduction and what it was about the sport that caused you to really go for it.
Okay, well, I have 5 brothers, and we played at home, and then I joined a club. And I had this unusual grip, and that kind of went from there. I was a baseball player. I played a lot of sports. I didn't really play ping pong at that time seriously. I just played for fun. And then as I got a little bit older, I practiced with my brothers. We got a table at home, and kind of went from there. It was playing at the club and playing in tournaments, and then I went from my grip was something that was really set me apart. I was pretty good in the junior level, but in 1972 I was ranked 71 in the men's. And I read about this new rubber that came out, anti-spin. And since I only play with one side of the racket, the anti-spin was something I tried, and it brought my level way up. So that was part of the reason why I really got into the sport, was when that anti-spin came out, I was kind of a good player, but I became an elite player almost overnight. So in a way, the equipment helped me a lot.
And did you find that coaches or other players were trying to convince you not to play in your very unique style?
Oh, yeah, all along the way. As a matter of fact, that was my incentive, was to prove everybody that my style was good. I had already played for about 5 years that way. Very difficult for me to change, but I liked being unique. I like being different. I kind of like that in sports, to be different as long as you pay attention to the techniques. Matter of fact, when I first got invited to the Canadian Nationals, and I was so excited. I got the letter from USA Table Tennis, and I made the junior team. And we went up to Canada, and there were 4 players. And I was probably the best player on the team, at least I thought I was. And the rankings were kind of shaky back then. And my dad went with me, and 3 guys got to play, and 1 had to sit. So I had to sit. The coach didn't think that my style was good enough. And I ended up winning the juniors later in the tournament, so I kind of proved him wrong. And to this day, he always says that was his biggest mistake he ever made.
Yeah, and I think you do see this a lot in players, is coaches kind of selecting the ones that look the best and have got the nicest technique, and, you know, other people kind of get left behind a bit. But I mean, the results really speak for themselves, don't they? And provided you're able to use your technique to beat players, people can't really argue if you're the one that keeps winning all of the titles.
Well, a couple great things about my style is that when you play me, you've probably never played anyone like that before. So right away, I've got you on your heels, possibly. And especially internationally, Eric Bogan and I, we did very well internationally. The first couple times you played us, if you really didn't know what you were doing, you were in a lot of trouble, because a lot of techniques that work normally don't work anymore. It's a different kind of game. So I really like that advantage, especially on the international level. I think that if you're a U.S. player now and you play shake hands and you play normal, boy, that's a heck of a mountain to climb. I don't know if you can ever make it to get to the high European or high Chinese level or Japanese level. But if you play a unique style like mine and you're a good athlete, you can break down a lot of barriers.
Yeah, because I mean, this is something that goes back and forth quite a lot, is the idea of should we try and beat the Chinese at their own game and try and copy what they're doing, or should we try and come at it from a different approach? And it sounds like you're very much in the camp of we need to try and do something different, because we're not going to be able to beat them at the kind of Chinese pyramid structure of table tennis.
That's basically true. I don't think anyone can beat the Chinese now, certainly not in the next few years. I don't see any real possibility. But if you come in a unique way, I mean, I actually believe that my style, if someone brings it in there, they'll be competitive against the Chinese. Of course, they'll analyze it and find the weaknesses. But initially, and even then, the uniqueness of the style is still, it's critical at that level, I think.
And what I thought was interesting from the book is, you know, we're going through all of the 70s, and you mentioned a few times how the Chinese were basically unbeatable. And it's 40 years have gone by and not much has changed, does it?
Well, actually, they're way stronger now than they were then. Back then, they were actually beatable on some level. They didn't have great morale, and they had some, styles that were out of play. Chen Long Ken and Jiang Jialiang, the styles were kind of not as good. So, but now, I mean, come on, they're more than machines. They're way, way ahead of the ball game. But, if I'm a player and I'm playing the Chinese, I'm thinking this is the chance of a lifetime. Then you got to take this guy down. People have to embrace the fact that the Chinese are not really invincible. If you think that way, then you're just not getting it done.
Cool. Okay. Well, you've mentioned your brothers and you were playing a lot at home and stuff. Did your brothers have the same technique as you?
Yeah, they play the same way as I do. My brother Ricky, and he and I won the U.S. doubles, and he was number 2 for a long time, and he beat Applegren at the World Championships. He played my style, and so did my brother Randy.
Okay. And something that kind of stuck out for me from the book is you and Ricky were obviously playing a lot together the whole way through, and he's a few years younger than you. Now, often what you find is that it's the younger brother that ends up being the really successful one. They're striving to reach the older brother, and then they overtake them, and then from there they're the one that really makes it. But it seems like you were always just above Ricky. I wonder if you got any idea why that was, why you think you kind of stood out as the top dog.
Well, Ricky always says it's because I'm a lefty. He said it's because I'm a lefty. He said that's the only reason. I said, well, I think there's more to it than just that, but that's certainly a little bit of it. The other thing I think is that I'm ambidextrous. You know, I'm right-handed, left-handed, pretty equal. And my brother Ricky is not. He's real heavy right-handed, not as good with his left hand. I think at the highest level of sports, you really need to be ambidextrous. You got to work on your free side as much as you work on your arm side, because you need your whole body working in sync. And players that are ambidextrous certainly do that better.
Okay. And one other thing that stood out in the book is you said back when you first started playing, you were originally playing with your right hand and then you decided to switch to your left. I wonder if you could explain kind of how that happened.
Well, growing up, you know, everything was right-handed. I did everything right-handed. The only thing I ever did was I would write left-handed, and I was always wondering, why did I write left-handed? It seemed more comfortable. I could feel things better with my left, but I never played any sports. Baseball right-handed, football, basketball right-handed. And so I didn't even really try. My left hand is not even coordinated. If you throw up lobs to me, I have a lot of trouble hitting high balls because I'm not that coordinated on my left side like I am on the right. But, you know, one day I just picked up the paddle with the left, and I had that sort of feeling and touch, sort of that fine touch on my left side where my right side was like power. And it just kind of melded, and I said, wow, I'm way better with this side. Didn't even know. Yeah,
that's really interesting because it wasn't even a tactical decision that you thought being left-handed would be better. It just actually felt better for you being left-handed table tennis player.
Yeah, that was eye-opening. I don't know. I must have been about 10 years old or 11 years old when I was at the rec department, and I just started messing around with my left hand. I started, cut slicing balls and hitting forehands, and I was like, geez, I didn't really ever try anything on that side. But I used to use my left side in basketball and, a little bit in baseball doing things, but never anything with power.
So in matches, did you ever get the chance to switch from right hand to left hand, or was that not really something that happened?
I never thought about that, but actually the other day I thought that, boy, I could be pretty good if I ever switched. I think with my grip, it would be pretty hard to switch it over to that other side with two different kinds of rubber.
Yeah. Something to work on, though.
Always working on something.
Yeah. Okay, well, so it seemed like you played a lot as a junior. You did very well as a junior in America. And then in the book, you said that you decided to have a year out, go and play table tennis, and then maybe go to college after the year. And then it was in that year that things kind of really took off for you, and you decided, actually, I'm just going to go for it completely with the table tennis. So, what do you think caused that huge jump that year?
Well, mainly when I moved to after the U.S. Open, which I did pretty well. I think it was in June. Del Suarez was there, and he was the number 2 U.S. man player. And the Chinese we had just been invited to China, and they were coming back to America. And table tennis was in the news everywhere. And Del was opening up a club in Grand Rapids with a mail order business, and he said he didn't have a practice partner for the summer. And he wanted to know if I was available. And I thought, I was playing baseball. And I thought, well, boy, number 2 U.S. man, I could practice every day at this new club. And, maybe I could get good and see how good I could be. I was already the U.S. number 1 junior, but I wasn't very good in the men's division. I was just sort of average. So then I spent those 3 months at his club. We played 3 or 4 hours a day. I actually played about 6 or 7 hours every day because he would go to work. And during those 3 months, I improved tremendously. And then with the fact that I had the anti-spin on the other side of my racket, I now had sort of a weapon that most people didn't know what to do, and it was the same color back then. So some people really had no idea what to do. So it really made my game, not only I was very physical, but it was also there was a lot of technical stuff going on there too.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like you just had a huge step up in the quality of the practice that you were getting.
That was it for sure. Then my brother Ricky started playing very serious too. So when I'd go home, I'd have Ricky at home, and I'd have Del Suarez when I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Right. Okay. So that's when you really started to do well on the international level, I guess. And you've still got this interesting style and grip. I know you just said that the rubbers would have been the same color on both sides, which sounds like a massive advantage for a combination player compared to now where it's, you can tell so easily. Does that mean, was it a black rubber on both sides?
I had red on both sides, but the anti-spin was a little bit duller, so you could actually tell, but for some reason, a lot of people couldn't tell.
Okay, so you basically can just use whichever side, and unless someone's really paying attention, it's difficult to know whether you've played a shot with the anti or with the normal reverse rubber.
Well, yeah, the key there would be is they always had to hesitate and wait and see what kind of stroke and then listen, and then that hesitation is, kind of critical.
Yeah. So what year was it when they changed that rule?
1983.
Okay. So was that, and when how long did you say 83 was kind of the end of your kind of peak bit of career?
Pretty much. I mean, I actually played pretty strong up until 85.
But did that have a big effect, or did it not have that much of an effect, the change to having to have one red, one black rubber?
It didn't affect my game that much. I'm sure it did some, maybe 10%, but it did affect Eric because he used his anti-spin a lot and he really used it to attack. So it hurt him a little bit. But overall, I don't think, it hurt us that bad. It just took one of our advantages away.
Sure. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about your style, because I'm sure that some people that are listening probably aren't even aware of what the Seemiller grip is and what it means. So I wonder if you could describe what's different with your grip compared to kind of the standard shake hands or penhold grip that people use.
Okay, well, I'm only using one side of the paddle for forehand and backhand. A regular shake hand grip on the forehand is sort of back in the palm. Mine is turned a little bit forward, a little bit Western style, just a little. So the forehand, I tried to make it exactly as like a regular forehand. So I didn't want to mess with the forehand side. Instead of turning it over for the backhand, I would then sort of windshield wiper it over and lift my elbow up. So it's all sort of like one big windshield wiper from forehand to backhand, if you imagine a windshield wiper. So the backhand is now in a windshield wiper position. And I have to adjust my grip a little bit on the backhand counter because the racket would be too closed. And then if I have to push with the backhand, I have to adjust it again. So I have three different grips. I got the forehand grip and then the backhand counter and the forehand and the backhand push. And that might seem a little confusing, but they kind of go in sync. And once you get used to it, it's not too hard, but it's almost impossible for someone to figure it out unless I showed them.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out how it goes. So let's say you're trying to do a backhand push. Is your palm facing up?
I put my thumb, now my thumb does go off the front of the racket and it goes on the corner, the little corner of the handle, not on the side of the paddle, but on the corner to open it up.
Okay. And let's say you wanted to attack a backspin ball with your backhand. How would you go about doing that?
I would raise my elbow, drop my racket down, and try to use my wrist, which is a little bit in an upright position, so my backhand loop is a little weak.
Okay. So you're coaching players now. Do you ever coach players to use this grip, or do you just generally coach like the normal grip? But how do you go about it?
Well, for years, I never coached anyone to use my grip, ever. But if someone asks me, of course, I'll coach them. I always coach shake hand. But now these guys have been telling me I should coach my grip, and I've started to coach some people with it, and it's amazing. They get so much better. They can't wait to do more of it. And my whole junior team, I was talking to them one day. We're watching videos, and they were saying, "Coach, we want to play in the Olympics, man." And I said, I just made a statement that if you play shake hands, you're not going to be able to beat these guys. It's just not going to happen. It's not possible with what we have available to us, and our table tennis environment's not good enough. I said, but if you play my style, and it's unique, and you learn it right, you can compete with anybody in the whole world. And all my players, they switched over, and they're just loving it. And I kind of like it. It's a nice little thing. Hopefully, when we go into battle, we can show people that the style really does work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that we haven't really experienced at all in the UK. But I mean, this was some people call this a Seemiller grip. Sometimes it's kind of known as the American grip, isn't it? It does seem more popular over in the States.
Well, for years I've always said it's the American grip, and everybody they stuck my name with it, and I really felt like it was really more of an American grip. But now that they've stuck my name with it, I'm willing to take it.
Sure. Okay.
I mean, I'm pretty proud of it because, I mean, like say I was in Spain and there were 4,600 players there. And I think there was one other guy that played my style, sort of. So you imagine 4,600 players, and I'm the only one playing this style, and I'm probably maybe one of the top 10 guys in the place.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, to me, I've walked around, I was thinking I was pretty proud of that.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, well, so I wanted to ask you just in general, what were your strengths as a player? I know there were a few things that came up in the book, but I'd like to kind of hear it from you, what you think looking back kind of really separated you from other players and helped you to win.
Well, my style was my backhand serve is really good. I mean, even today, almost no one can return it. My side topspin backhand serve is just a killer. My service game has always been good, sets me up well. When I was younger, I had a very powerful loop. I was very strong with the legs. I could really aggressively pivot into the ball. And then I blocked well on the backhand. My weaknesses were my backhand. I really couldn't attack real well with the backhand. And also, if you attack my wide forehand, don't tell anybody. That's going to be a weakness of the Seemiller grip. Is anything out on the wide forehand is hard to defend because we have to stay over and protect the backhand. But once we know that, we can sort of cover and watch for it. But that's a tough. We're always working on fixing that. But I think most players have a lot of trouble on the wide forehand.
Yeah, definitely. So what about your serves were so good then, Dan? Because that did come up in the book a lot, people saying that they really struggled against your serves. Had you just done loads of practice serving, or did you have kind of unique things that only you were doing?
Well, my brother Ricky had a windshield wiper serve that was like the best in the world. I swear no one could touch it. We had unique serves. He had a windshield wiper serve where he would pivot and use his legs and go down on the ball, and everyone would put it in the bottom of the net or fly it off the end. And then I had a backhand serve where I don't think anybody does it the way I do. I just kind of come up on the ball and I pivot backwards a little bit, and it comes up topspin, and everybody pushes it. It goes way up in the air. I think I do get, a real good pivot into the ball, but I've never seen too many players with backhand serves that have the topspin like that.
So what's really standing out to me is that you guys were very much outside of the system, weren't you? So there was so much that you were doing that was different and surprising. That seems to be the big advantage.
Well, we were basically, city players. We learned without any coaching at all before, 5 or 6 years in. And back in those days, there was almost no coaching. I mean, it was, and we found a style that worked. And then when we were able to use both sides of the racket, and things just sort of worked out. But you're right. We definitely didn't run with the pack. We went, everybody went right. We kind of went left.
Because I think if you go along to a junior or cadet tournament these days and you look at the players, everyone basically looks like a carbon copy of each other. They might have tiny things that they do differently, but the serves are all the same. The technique is all the same. It's like watching two little robots that have been programmed just slightly differently playing each other, and you can kind of work out what's going on. And players don't generally look that surprised. I mean, it's different when you see people in local leagues and that, but if you're looking at kind of the elite juniors, it looks like everyone's kind of doing the same thing.
Oh yeah, it's all all banana backhand flip and power forehand, the same serves, hidden serves. But I guess it's hard in any sport to become unique and still stay within the techniques and make it work. I mean, that's got to be tough, but I've always kind of liked doing that.
There must be a fine line between doing things different and doing things wrong, because to some extent the technique has developed because it's the most efficient, it's the best way of playing a certain shot. But then at the same time, often it's the surprise element that's actually going to win you points. So in your coaching, let's say, and you're getting this balance between trying to create players that aren't just like little robots that do everything the same, but then also understanding the kind of basic fundamental things that you need to get right. How do you put those two together? Because it seems like if we are going to go against the Chinese with kind of different tactics, we need need some kind of technical understanding, but then we just need to apply it in a different way.
Well, if you're going to be unique, you're going to have to certainly follow the technical rules of the sport. You're going to have to play the right way. You're going to have to play with the right positions. You're going to have to do everything else right. The stroke's still going to have a good backswing and a good follow through. You're going to have to make sure that those things are within reason. If they're not, then you're doing it wrong. And like you said, it's a fine line between doing something different and doing something wrong. And if you're doing wrong, it's just a waste of time. If you want to be different, most players that are different are definitely doing things wrong. But if you can do something different and you're doing a lot of things right, you're probably not going to be able to do all things right. If you can do a lot of things right and you can work your techniques into the game, you can become a heck of a player.
Because I think, thinking about who's listening to this podcast, I know a lot of guys email me and maybe they haven't had that much coaching. So they have developed what people would say are bad habits. And it's for them, it's going to be the task is going to be working out which bad habits they are definitely bad habits that they need to change, and which are just kind of quirks that some coaches are going to try and iron out, but could maybe just be left to kind of develop and improve along. And I mean, how are they going to understand that? Because let's say you've got someone who's been playing for quite a few years, not had much coaching. Maybe they don't know everything about all of the correct technical stuff. How can they know if their unorthodox forehand is fundamentally wrong and they need to kind of learn a new way of doing it, or if they're onto something and they just need to tweak it a bit?
Well, that's a tough question, but I think you just have to always keep working technically. You have to work on understanding yourself. You have to understand your game. You have to look at your stroke. Is the backswing and the follow through, are they proper? Are they on the same line that you're going on? Are you using the free arm properly? There's things that you're going to need to know and keep working on so that you understand your game. Too often players, they don't worry about their technique. And technique, if you fix your technique, it'll save you 500 hours of practice. So I think you should really I think people out there that are listening to this podcast should really get to know their backhand. What's the perfect backhand? How's their perfect loop look? And can they keep doing that same loop over and over again? What I try to talk to my students is that you need to find the middle of everything. The middle, the neutral stance, the backswing, the follow through, the stance, the backswing when things are right. If you're in the middle, it's like that in all sports. You got to go down the middle of the basketball court or down the middle of the football or anything. That way you can either go straight or you can go right or you can go left. And in table tennis, you need to be able to go all directions. So I think that's definitely like the most important thing.
Yeah, so you're not anti-technique at all. You're just coming at it from a slightly different perspective.
No, as I get older, that's all I think about is technique. I think it's just critical. It's just so, there's so many gems in table tennis to learn. People don't realize how complex this sport is. It's so complex. And the more you learn, the easier it gets.
Definitely. Okay, something else that came up from reading the book was your emphasis on tactics and strategy and placement, moving the ball around, and there were a few interviews where you were asked kind of like how you played certain players, and it came out that you're very much a good tactical thinking player. Now, I was wondering how you developed that. Is that just something that came naturally? Is it something that you worked on to compensate for other areas in your game?
Yeah, as a competitor, I always, want to think about the tactics and the strategy and how to, what the weaknesses are of the other player and how to recognize those quickly, from how they stand, how they warm up, how they play the match before. So I think that when you're in a match, if you're going to be a fighter, which I think I am, you never give up and you can always come back. You keep moving the ball around. You change your serve from one spot to another. I think if you do that, it keeps your focus. And I've always been really good at that.
Because it's quite easy to look at a player and within a few seconds work out if their technique is decent or not, or if they look physically in shape or not. But when it comes to tactics, that's quite hidden. It's difficult to know just from looking at a player whether they're good tactically, weak tactically. And I think that actually has led to a lot of players just not putting that much effort into developing the tactical side of their game.
Well, that's true. And, one thing you don't like to play is a guy who's a smart player. I tell my students, you want to be known as a smart player because those are the scariest ones. They know how to get out of situations. They know how to adapt. They know how to handle the serves, and they know when and what they need and when they need it. So that's one of the goals I try to get to my players is that, you want to go through a match and you got to make a lot of decisions, and hopefully you're making good ones most of the time.
Yeah. Okay, so you want your players to be smart players. Obviously, you want everyone listening to this podcast to be a smart player. What are some tips for becoming a smart player? I know Larry's got a brilliant book on tactics and we've spoken to Larry on the show. But Dan, what are your top tips for becoming good tactically at table tennis?
Well, I think number one, attack the middle. That's number one, and there's almost no number two. You go right at the pocket of the other player. If he's a little bit strong on the backhand, you have to go a little bit right of center, and if he's a little bit strong on forehand, you got to go a little left of center. The middle does move, so you have to work at being good at finding it. And some players are quick, but nobody can really ever hide their middle. It's always available. You just got to find it. Wide forehand is awesome. I mean, if you can get the ball to a wide forehand on anybody, what it does there is the table's in the way, so it's hard to really hit a good forehand. And it also pulls the player out of that backhand corner where they can be so offensive and do a lot out of that backhand corner that you don't want them to do. So when I'm playing, I attack the middle, even when I loop or even when I block. If you loop, I'm going to block it right on your pocket. If I can't, if the middle or the backhand is not open, but that's where I want to go. Wide forehand, every chance I get, if I have the angle, I go wide forehand. No matter what, because wide forehand it's like a pitch in baseball. You need to go there just to keep the guy honest so he doesn't turn around that backhand corner and use his forehand too often.
Yeah. Okay, so you're really talking about the importance of placement and not just playing big shots that feel really nice, but playing them straight into your opponent's forehand or backhand kind of zones.
Right, and never think there are no such things as winners. You're just looking to get the advantage in this rally, advantage in that rally. You're always looking to get the advantage in the rally, and the ball's always coming back. So you never really, there is no such thing as a winner because the player's going to bring it back. So you got to get ready. So when I play, I just want to try to get the advantage, maybe get him in the middle, and then maybe get him wide, and maybe get him wide again, and just build the advantage until the point ends.
Brilliant. I like that a lot. Yeah, and that's definitely something that people need to think more of, because I think people, especially young players these days, they're getting too into just playing perfectly technical shots that feel really nice for them, but it's no good if the placement isn't kind of making it difficult for your opponent. So you're much better off playing a slightly less powerful, less spinny shot into your opponent's crossover than playing like the textbook perfect forehand straight into the forehand block.
Absolutely. I think one of the best pieces of advice I've been given to my students lately, and it really helps them, is especially when they're wild with their loop, is I tell them that you need to loop safe or you need to loop safer. That's your two options. You're going to be looping safe or you're going to loop even safer than that. Because especially when these players, they loop the underspin ball and the other guy blocks, they always loop the next one long. They need to be very safe with that next ball. And a lot of times when you loop, it's not always the quality. It's a matter just being able to get two in a row on.
Yeah, it's just the consistency, isn't it? It's people are just making way too many unforced errors.
And players should be just as happy that when player blocks them in the net as they do off the end. You don't always have to force the guy to block it off the end. Going in the net works just as well.
Yeah, nice stuff. Okay, well, Dan, you were using a combination bat, and I know like most of the time you were actually using the reverse rubber, but you had the anti on the offside as well. Do any of your players use combination bats today? And how do you kind of view that style going forward from 2017? Now we've got the bigger ball. I get questions from time to time with people saying kind of a short pip's dead, a long pip's dead. Do I need to just start becoming an attacking player? How do you view that?
Well, I don't think the combination racket's going to work too well. I mean, anybody that's chopping is going to have trouble. I mean, it's that's nice to be unique, but it's a tough way to play. Certainly in the inverted and all the spin game and, the power topspin is not going to go away. So, I mean, that's really what you need to have in your game. That's sort of the main weapon. So, all my players, most of them that they use anti-spin on one side. We've never really used the long pimples. I just never went there. I just started with anti, and since I'm old school, it's very hard for me to change. Matter of fact, I'll tell you a story. I've played with my racket for 35 years, since 1980, and it was a all wood racket, a Gruba. I loved it, and I had it all fixed up, and I always wanted to change to these new rackets, the new fiber. I'm getting old. I need power. I need speed, and I would always change for a couple of weeks, and then I would get in a term. I'd go back to my old paddle, and then I would play for a couple more months, and then I'd go back to my old paddle. So one time I had a bad loss, and I finally said, I'm never gonna be able to get away from this wood paddle, so I broke it. And I broke it, and then I tried to go with the carbon fiber. It didn't work. I'm back to wood again anyways. But now I wish I wouldn't have broke that paddle, but I had to, It was the only way, because I really feel good with the carbon fibers too, but I'm a kind of a blocker at heart. And when you're a blocker at heart and the other guy's hitting, these rocket loops, I feel like I need wood to control it. If I got the carbon fiber, it just seems to shoot too fast.
Sure. Okay, what about short pips? So Matthias Carlsen has done very well recently. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's kind of up in the top 30 in the world for the men, and he's got short pips on his forehand, and there aren't many of those around at the moment. Can that still work, do you think?
No, I don't think so. Matthias is amazing. I watched him play in that Scandinavian tournament. He is amazing with that forehand. But, it can maybe work, but in this day and age, and the power and the strength of the athletes, and not being able to make true topspin, that's a unique style that it's going to take a lot of work to make it work. Matthias has a tremendous backhand, which helps him, get that forehand to work. But his backhand is pretty amazing.
Okay, so there's not a huge amount to gain from just using different rubbers, but it's more coming up with slightly different styles using kind of a standard attacking bat.
Yeah, I would think so. If you're playing with a standard attacking bat, there's, I'm not sure what all you can do differently than the other guys.
So it's tough either way.
It's always tough. There's no easy route. If I was, one thing I think players need to do is to be able to turn the ball both ways. You should be able to hook your loop to the left, and you should be able to fade it to the right, and you should be able to drive it straight. And I think that's I don't think players do enough of that. Waldner was incredible with that, being able to hook them and fade them, and a lot of those players were really good in the old days. But nowadays it's more sort of hook and just drill them and backhand drill. And then, of course, the banana on the backhand, which is certainly hard to handle, that's for sure.
Okay, so just more variation all round you're getting at.
Yeah, I think if you want to become unique now, what I think might come next in the sport, the bananas, the net, last thing, I think someone may develop deep service game that it's going to be difficult to defend because nobody really has a deep service game. That's what I do now. I serve deep a lot, and players have no idea how to handle them because they never see it. And my deep service game isn't even any good. It's just pretty good. I could just see someday in the future someone coming up with deep, vicious serves and being like a tennis player where you can't hardly even defend them. That's what I was thinking. Someone asked me that question the other day, what's going to be next in the sport? And I was thinking, well, what would be? And I think that might be it. Might be.
Okay, so these would be fast serves or heavy spin serves?
Both. There'd be a little bit of everything. You'd have the fast dead ball down the middle, the heavy side under wide, fast down the line, side top into the body. And then, of course, some short ones just to keep them honest. But, you could probably do 3 deep ones and 1 short one. And if the deep ones were good, I think you could dominate someone who might even be a great player who just doesn't know how to handle it.
Okay, just because people are used to stepping in, flicking, touching, doing all that kind of stuff. They're just doing that 99% of the time.
Oh, yeah, and you immediately take away the backhand banana. That's not even coming into play ever. And so if someone's doing that, they're never going to get to do that. And they better be on their toes, and they better be ready to loop. And if you're good at counterattacking, you serve really well, players are not going to be able to get off on your serve. It's just not going to happen. And then you should be able to get first attack or counterattack. So maybe that's where it's headed.
Yeah. Well, it'll certainly be interesting to see.
Of course, the Chinese won't do that, though, because their short technique is just too good.
Yeah. All the over-the-table stuff is where they They come into their own.
Yeah, and the rubber they have, it's so spinny, it's so heavy, it's heavier than everyone else's. I don't know how that works, but I don't know if that's just technique or they just have better rubber, but I think it's both.
Yeah, probably. Okay, so let's talk about this 2018 World Vets Tournament that you're organising. When's that? What month is that in?
It's going to be June 17th to 24, 2018. It'll be in Las Vegas. It'll be in the Convention Center. We have several hotels lined up, and we're expecting 5,000 players. I played in my first one in Spain, and it was so exciting. I mean, it's a little bit of a social event, but there's a lot of people that are serious, too, trying to win a world championship. And I was just amazed that there are 4,600 players. The camaraderie was first. Competition was sort of second, but still it was there. And to watch, like when they have the Thursday single elimination and doubles, say you have 200 tables, which we're going to have 250 tables. If you have 4 people on every table, that's 800 players, say at 9 a.m. And then at 9:30, it's another round, and it's 800 more players. And then at 10, it's 800 more, and it's kind of like being at a football game. It's so cool. It's not like a regular ping pong tournament. But we're really excited about it. It's going to be the largest tournament in the world, and I think people, if they come and watch it, it's unlike any other tournament.
Yeah, and it's a great chance to get out to the US and to Vegas, and so I can imagine a lot of people wanting to go.
Well, that's what we're hoping for. The European veterans are in June this year. We're going to go there, and then we'll be opening up registration July 1st. So we're hoping, the word is everybody wants to come, but we'll wait and see how registrations come in. But it's going to be real exciting in June of 2018, that's for sure.
Awesome. So you're running that. You're also going to be playing?
Yeah, I hope to play. Yeah, I'm going to be playing doubles with Chen Yinghua. And so we're hoping to do pretty well in the 60 to 64 group. And then I'll be playing singles, but you don't play a lot. I mean, you play your round robin group where you play round robin of 4, and the top 2 go into the championship division, and the bottom 2 go into the consolation. And then you do that in the doubles. And then they have a day off, and then they get into the single eliminations. Like I think in the over 50s last year, there was 1,100 players in the over 50s. So if you want to be the champion, you have to beat out 1,100 players. That's pretty tough.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing when you see a draw. In the doubles, Dave Sakai and I won 8 rounds, and we were only in the semis. So we lost in the semis, and we got a bronze, but we took 8 rounds to get there. That's a lot of rounds.
And do you fancy your chances?
Oh, well, I'll be running it, so I'm way more important to people that it runs well and people enjoy themselves than how I do. And but, if I'm ready and my legs are going, I'm hoping, to do well. It's always exciting to play in a tournament like that.
Awesome. And how about your game, your style now? Have you changed anything, or do you still play exactly the same as you did back in the 70s and the 80s?
Oh, no, I change a lot. I'm changing all the time now. For a while there, I used to just serve short and loop, and try to loop everything. But I would get ahead 3 games to 1 or 2 to 1, and my legs, I get so tired, I couldn't keep doing that. And I kept losing these leads, so I realized I had to start picking and choosing when I loop and when I need to use my legs. So that's why I developed a long service game now, so I can really serve deep and then block to the other corner and do some more blocking. So I probably block about 40% now and loop 60% instead of 80-20.
Okay, because that's something that I actually get a lot of emails from older players that they're not sure, especially if they're relatively new to the game or they've been playing a few years. They're kind of taking traditional coaching advice and watching coaching stuff online, and they're not sure if this is kind of good coaching for a teenager or if it's kind of applicable to all ages. And I try and help them out. I mean, I haven't done loads of coaching with older players, but what top tips would you have, let's say, for players in their 50s, 60s, 70s that are wanting to continue improving, and they're not sure about what kind of game to develop, understanding that, they're not in their 20s anymore, they're not going to be jumping around left and right. What do you suggest? Well,
one thing is to make sure when you play defense, play aggressive defense. So as an older player, you get guys looping at you or they're coming at you. There's no reason why, if you don't position yourself well, that you can't counterattack the offense that's coming at you. That would be first priority. Second thing is you would have to, you got to pick and choose when you're going to loop, and be careful with that backhand loop because it takes a lot of movement to get in position for that. You just have to play a lot smarter, maybe concentrate a little more on ball placement, maybe put a little bit more arc on your loop. Don't go forward so much. That way, give yourself a little more time. Definitely, what I like to teach is make sure you play the neutral ball cross court, and if you can, try to get it early so you can, even break the cross court line. Because if you don't get in position for that, you'll never get in position for it. So that helps a little bit. But the main thing I think is when you play defense, don't play, patty cake defense. Play aggressive defense. Push really quick. Take it off the bounce. Block fast to the body. Try to open up an offense from your defensive side.
Sure. So you might not be going for always trying to attack first and being really strong with big loops and open ups, but you can actually take some of the aggression from that and put it into the other areas of your game.
Yeah, I mean, plan out your defense. Like if I'm playing, a lot of times I serve heavy underspin deep to the wide forehand, and the player is a little bit surprised, so they loop it, but they're a little bit late, and then I block anti-spin to the other side. And that's, one technique that I'm totally planning out. Or I'll serve underspin deep to the backhand, they loop the backhand, and I jam it down their middle. So I'm planning out a defensive strategy that's actually an offensive strategy.
Yeah, and this is all strategy, all tactics. You're thinking about what you want to happen. You're not just swinging and playing and trying to feel good.
Oh no, you're definitely, especially when you're serving, you got to anticipate. So hopefully your serve is going to, bring what you're looking for most of the time.
Great. Nice stuff. Dan, I wonder is there anything that you feel like we've missed that you really wanted to say? Anything about the book or just general advice?
Well, if you want to read a good table tennis book, there's a story, I hate to say it's just about my life. I also have all my tips in there. I got some coaching tips. I got some coaching at the end. It's a good story about table tennis. I don't know how many people have written a story like this. So if you buy my book, it's on Amazon.com. I think you'll enjoy it, and you can even pass it on to your friends. It's a good table tennis story. Me and my brother, we practiced in our backyard for years, and we said we were going to beat the Chinese, and we did it. And it's in the book, and there's some other times that we did beat the Chinese. So we were at the top level there for a while, and we did it in a unique way. So I think the story is worth reading.
Yeah, it's a brilliant story. And I guess one thing that really came out of it for me was just the idea that you don't need the best coaches, the best kind of training hall and environment, and to be surrounded by a professional club of players to get big kind of impressive results and improvement. And you and your brother really proved that, you can succeed despite all of those things if you've got the right attitude, the right dedication, and you really go for it.
That's totally true. So many times players say, I can't get any better because I don't have good enough practice partners, or I don't have a good enough coach. If you have that attitude, you're already done at that point. You have to make do with what you have, and then whatever happens, you do the best you can. When I coach my students, winning and losing is not part of what we're looking at. We're looking at that they perform, they do the best they can, they work hard, and then they learn from it. If you put winning and losing, if you try to win, you end up losing. So I think that's definitely a good lesson that people can learn.
And I always felt like you had just a really strong belief in yourself and your ability to perform when it matters and just get the results.
Well, you got to have that. I mean, I even today, I still think I'm getting better. I'm 62 years old, and my people say, well, you can't get better at 62. Of course you can. You get better techniques, a little better serves, a little better timing. I'm certainly a lot slower. I know that. I hate to watch myself on video, but my techniques are good. So I think you always want to try to get better. If you're not trying to get better, then it's not going to be as much fun.
Brilliant. That's great, Dan. Thanks so much for coming on.
Okay, Ben, and I've always enjoyed reading all your techniques and stuff on Expert Table Tennis. You explain it really well, and I like reading it.
Thank you. All right. Cheers. It's been great talking to you, Dan.
Okay, Ben. Thanks a lot.
See you later. Bye.
All right, bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that one. A huge thanks to Dan for joining me on the show. And just what an athlete, what a story he's got. Just achieved so much when you consider how little coaching he received as a young player. Managed to get up into the top 30 players in the world and all of those titles. And, I was just really inspired hearing about his dedication and the way that he just wouldn't let anyone tell him that it wasn't going to be possible for him to make it. He was convinced that he was going to go and beat the Chinese and reach the top of the world, and he went and did it. So brilliant stuff from Dan. Definitely go and buy the book. It's an excellent read, really interesting, learning more about Dan's career and kind of the history of US table tennis. And it's also just filled full of little tips that you can apply to your game as well. So go and check that out on Amazon in the US or in the UK. Dan Seemiller, Revelations of a Table Tennis Champion. Definitely worth buying. Before we go, I'd like to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, tabletennisuniversity.com. They've got some of the best online video training available on the internet, all sorts of different video courses. Some of them are free, some are premium, but if you go and join up as a free member at tabletennisuniversity.com, you'll be able to access the free courses and check out the free previews on some of the premium stuff as well. That's not going to cost you a penny. And they've also got a weekly blog as well that comes out on Mondays where different coaches just write an article for it. So go and check out tabletennisuniversity.com. And finally, please go and join the Expert Table Tennis Academy on Facebook. I kind of set up that as a bit of a community because I've got the email list now, which has got more than 5,000 table tennis players on it. But it's not very good. Well, it's good if people want to kind of contact me, but it's not so great to help people to connect with each other. And the Facebook group is a really great way to do that. So people every week are asking questions, sharing their progress, and then they get comments and stuff from other people in the group. So if that's the kind of thing that you'd be interested in, just go to Facebook, search for Expert Table Tennis Academy. The group will come up and you can apply to join, and I'll join you, accept you into that. So that would be awesome. I will be back with a new episode on the 1st of March. Until then, you can check out my Ask a Table Tennis Coach podcast. That's a daily show where I answer questions from you guys. So just have a search for Ask a Table Tennis Coach. You can find that on iTunes, SoundCloud, or you can go to experttabletennis.com/ask and you can find all of the previous episodes. Still a relatively new thing. I only started it in January, but I'm really enjoying doing that, and I hope that you guys are enjoying listening to it too. So that's all for now. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.